Morning, everyone. Good morning. We are now beginning today a preparation for the Shabbos, and this Shabbos is going to be Shabbat Mavorchim, which Shabbat Mavorchim means it's the last week of this month, the month of Shvat, and preparing for the next week, which is going to be Monday night, Tuesday is going to be Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month of Adar. When Adar comes in, you're supposed to increase in happiness. We learned about that a little bit yesterday. And now let's learn a speech that the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe gave in, 1955, I think, about 1955. And it is about Purim, the holiday of Purim, which is the highlight of the month of Adar, and which there was a tremendous miracle. And this was in 1957. Okay, let's first of all give charity. We'll give charity in the name of the future redemption, which should be present redemption. The Geula Shlema, Moshiach should come, all troubles should end. And let's say a word of praise to the Creator of the universe. Hodu Lashem Ki Tov Ki L'Olam Chazdo. Thank you, God. You are good, and your kindness is eternal, and your kindness is to the physical world. La'olam. Der Yom Tov, the holiday of Purim. The holiday of Purim is the Libda Nesis because of the miracle, when Hatzalah and the salvation, was which their Ibishter, which God had Geredovitz, which God saved the Yiddish folk, the Jewish people, from Gezeris Kliya, from total extermination of Haman. As we know, the decree was, when did this happen? Right before the second temple was built. In fact, it even delayed the building of the second temple. And then all came along. Haman, Achashverosh was the king of the world in those days. And a person called Haman convinced Achashverosh to kill all the Jews. And so the Jews had nowhere to run. And the idea was to kill them all in one day. So they basically had no time to run. As soon as the decree started, they wouldn't, and all their neighbors, everyone was supposed to kill the Jews, everyone. And everyone agreed. And suddenly was this amazing miracle that everything turned around. And to the degree that even Achashverosh, the king that was going to kill them, he all of a sudden became their best friend. And he gave him permission to build the temple. And okay. Yana Tekufa, every single, back then, that period in history was Al Pitava, naturally, the Gelichtlicher Faryidin. It was the most fortunate for Jews in the whole entire history of the Jewish exile. We're talking about after the temple was destroyed, second temple was destroyed, the Jews were wandering around the world and they were at the mercy of the non-Jews. And this was the best, ostensibly, the best situation that Jews had ever been in, even better than now. Even better than now. Why? The Yid and the Jewish people, first of all, Hadach Fanuman, so they took a very big place in the Reagan, in the government. It says that Mordechai, he was the head of the Sanhedrin. There was a Sanhedrin. Isgavan, he was the Sari Melucha. He was one of the high ministers of the king. Hayoshvim B'Shar Melech, he sat in the gate of the king. Esther, she was the queen of the king. She was the queen. She was the wife of the king of the whole world. Was Ishta, which a wife is like it says that a man's wife is part of him. Is the ganze the divrei and the whole history of the Jewish people, the Zaman of Galus, in the time that they were in exile, we do not find them fell from Esther, except for this time when Esther was the queen, as the Yiddish Freud, that a Jewish woman should be the wife of the king, which had ruled over the whole world, had the ganzen Welt, the whole world. So she was the queen of the world. It was a Jew. Huh? It's pretty good. Shalom. Good morning. And maybe you might say, well, she was just sort of a doormat or something. No, she was her chief advisor was Mordechai, a Yehudi. That Mordechai was, of course, only interested in the benefit of the Jewish people, right? And so things were good. Is that for is doch verstandig? So it's understood as is nit gewen kein Tekufa. Wasn't a time of exile, in welche which in the Jews sollen sein al pitava naturally mehr sicher mit their existence was more certain than in the days of Achashverosh. Jewish existence was not at all threatened. The poil, but what happened actually? At pursuit that occurred verkehrt exactly the opposite. Grad done vet al pitava, even though that according to nature was the best and most certain time for the Jewish people, is gekumen, but what came? A decree for nichtern, for destroying all of the Jewish people, hashmid la rogol abed, to destroy, to kill, and to liquidate all of the Jewish people. Minarva zaken, from men to, from children until, from the youth until the elders, babies, women, on the same day. Was das is given, which is the schwerste from all the gezeros. This is the worst decree which ever was in the history of the world. Kain Mol, there was never such a decree on the Jewish people. Wie the gezerah, like in the days of Achashverosh. Worst decree. But Hitler, he didn't have rulership of all the Jews, the whole world. Only the Jews which are in Europe were. And under gezeras and all the other decrees which were made on the Jewish people, is nitgaven, there wasn't any. It says in under gezeras is nitgaven, there was no place, like it says tzedakah asa kodesh baruch hu, that God had mercy on the Jewish people, that He scattered them all over the world. If there was one nation where there was a decree to destroy all the Jews, or if the Yidden on the Jews is unter ir on that particular place, as während the Yidden, the Jewish people had on other places where they could run to. Unafilu the Yidden, and even those Jews from their Medina in that particular country, Kenendach Untleifem, they could run when Honor Medina said, and they could, even in that country, they could run to other countries. So if in all the rest of the world, let's take the example right now of the Holocaust. So the decree over there of the Nazis only was on the Jews that were under the control of the Nazis. And even those Jews, they could run to the other countries. They could make it out to America, wherever. Afilu b'yamei Paro, in the days of Paro, where all the Jews were under his rulership, when Esses Oich Nit Geven, there was not any meglechait, any possibility to run away from Egypt. Like the rabbis say that even one slave never escaped Egypt in the whole history of Egypt until all the Jews got out. Is Oberdort, but there is Nitkaven the Gezerah. There wasn't on everybody. Paro said, let's just kill the males, the male babies. In the day of Achashverosh, aber, seinen alle Yidden, all of the Jews were given unter sein Memshala. All the Jews in the whole world were under the rulership of Achashverosh. It says, Nitkaven, there was not any possibility to escape. Why? Because is given, he ruled over the whole world. Melech Molech Bekipa. A melech over the ganze Welt, he ruled over the whole world. Is b'meila, so therefore, is nit geven vuan, there was no place to run. Erad geven lahashmid b'yom echad. He wanted to destroy all the Jews in one day, so there was no time to run away. There was no time to run away. There was going to destroy them all day. Number 3, the gezerah is given lahashmid es kol Yudim, all of the Jews. Not just the men or just the women, all the Yidden, all the Jews, God forbid. Wie kommt es taka? How could it possibly be such a time? In such a time when everything was so good for the Jews, all of a sudden in one day, everything turned over. Everything, especially such a terrible decree. There tells us the Gemara says is the Siva that the reason for it was because all the Jews went to the meal of Achashverosh. What was so bad about participating in the meal? It even says that Achashverosh gave kosher food. That's how the Megillah starts off. That Achashverosh made this huge meal, like a half a year long, 6 months long. They had they had pleasure from the meal of Achashverosh. It says, what was the meal of Achashverosh? That Achashverosh's sorcerers and his wise men, they made a calculation that according to the prophecy of Jeremiah, that the Jewish people were supposed to come back from the exile. The first temple was destroyed, so they were supposed to come back from the exile in 70 years. And according to his, everybody knew it. And but his advisors said that the time had ended, 70 years had finished, and the Jewish people had not come back. And therefore, it's a sign that the Moshiach and the redemption, and that's it, that the Jewish people are finished. And so we made a big meal. And the Jews said, maybe the guy's right, let's not take any chances. So at least we'll, can't refuse the invitation. So they all participated in the meal. From them, Zenman, so we see B'Shefla clearly as Yidden and Teva, that Jews and nature, Zayin Tzvei Garfer Shidden Azachan, are not the same thing. The Hanhaga from Mitten Yidden, the conduct from Jews, is nit ungeworfen, is not underneath to natural laws. Nor as is upgehanget, therefore, but rather it depends on Kiyum Torah of the mitzvahs, on doing the Torah of the mitzvahs. And therefore, is nit gekommen, they didn't come, was mitzvah teva according to nature. I'm sorry, nit gekuken, notwithstanding that according to nature there was no possibility there would be such a terrible decree off of the Jews. The queen of the world, right? The queen of the world was a Jewish. Mordechai was one of the chief advisors of the king. All the Jews got invited to the meal. They were sitting high. They had no worries. Oh, but when as soon as the Jews, they had pleasure from the meal of Achashverosh, durach them, by means of this, it came a connection to nitkain kosher zach, and they had a connection with not kosher things. Is oivzei by their kakuman a gezerah kaliya rachman and Islam. They participated in the meal. It says that they had a choice; they could eat whatever they wanted to. They even provided causes kiratzon ish v'ish. The Zobar Ora, the same thing. As soon as they decided they wanted to be like everybody else, so all of a sudden they opened up themselves to hatred, which strangely, it came out. It doesn't make any sense really. Why did it express itself in that way? What's going on over there? Oh, here it is. Why did it express itself in that way? All of a sudden, let's destroy the Jews. Why, it doesn't really make any sense. Why destroy them? Why kill them? All of a sudden to kill all the Jews. Let's just say don't let the Jews, into in America was like in the 40s, 50s, up to even the 60s, the blacks couldn't drink from the same drinking fountain. They couldn't, no blacks could be in the government. No, make a decree like that off of the Jews. The Jews had to be separate. We don't want any Jews around. They'll put them in a separate place. Right? They can keep away. No, got to destroy them. Where did you get that from? Why destroy them all? It says because it doesn't make any sense. Jews do not make any sense. The existence of the Jews in the world doesn't make any sense. And under Agala says in other exiles, Zayin Yidden, the Jews weren't in. I'm sorry. Okay. The Zelber Hora, the same thing. Zenman, we can also see very clearly in the Ofen and the way of the salvation of the Jews. The Bittul, the Gezerah. How did the Jews negate? What is the holiday of Purim? That the Jewish people, they didn't use political power. Nitkeven al piteva, that the salvation of the Jews didn't come naturally, nor duach teshuva, but it came by means of returning to their Judaism, returning to their Jewish senses, ben kashrus, and returning to be attached to God. Right now, what you can see, but nowadays, big time. What does Trump say? What does the United Nations say? What does this person say? What does that person? The world they're condemning us. They're against us. They hate us. We have to be liked. Everybody has to be liked. We got to do anything we can that the whole world will like us. We'll be just like them, and then they'll all love us. Right? They'll all love us. The same thing when Zionism stood up. Oh, we're part of the United Nations. We're a nation like every other nation. We look like them and we act like them. And we sing like them and we dance like them and we eat like them and we're exactly like them because we're like them. So now everybody's going to like us, right? And you see, they do like us. Look, the president of this country, they came and they visited us, and this guy came and visited. That was the ideal of Zionism. We're going to melt into the whole world. We'll be a nation like everybody, and it will be everyone. So the Rebbe said, it's a good try. I mean, it's an idea, but it didn't work in Purim. Didn't work. Didn't work. So when we see that the salvation was miraculous, I think we can see the same thing now. Just a couple of years ago, she shot 30,000 missiles. They shot into Israel, 30,000. Right? If Canada would shoot one missile into America, right? Mexico would shoot a half a missile into America, there would be total war. Here they shot one missile and 5 missiles and 30 missiles and 300 missiles and 3,000 missiles and 30,000 missiles they shot at this. And God saved us. But here God saved us. He did it sort of on his own. But we'll see there's a lot of Jewish people in Israel that are getting the message of Purim. But the point that the Rebbe is trying to say is, as soon as you feel certain we got a nice big army and we got an atomic bomb, we have the best missiles and the best shooting and the best soldiers, and we're fast and we're swift and we're brave and we're like lions and everything, and all of a sudden comes October 7th and the army didn't do anything. The army just sat there for 6 hours. Everybody was killing what's going on? So it says, as soon as the Jews start to think that they're under nature and that they're trying to be like everybody else, is they're on shaky ground. I think what the Rebbe is trying to say here is not that we should watch out and that there's going to be another Holocaust, that there's going to be no. He's trying to say that we have to realize how much God loves us. That even though we're going totally against, we haven't listened to the message of Purim, and nevertheless here we are. Okay, Shas Mordechai, in the time of Mordechai and Esther, divorced, when they're divorced from their gezerah, as soon as they knew about this decree, what did they do? Habenzei and Plug, the first thing they should have used their diplomatic power, Mishtadel Zain, and go to Achashverosh. They should have gone to Achashverosh, their tzela, and tell him, and say to Achashverosh, listen, Achashverosh, the Jewish people have never done any bad to you. They've always been your friends. You just invited them to the meal, right? There was in the meal, everybody got drunk. Was any fighting? Anybody broke anything? With the Jewish people, we love you. Here, and yeah, I'll tell you something between me and Achashverosh. You like Esther, huh? So, I like her. She's a Jew. Oh, that's what they should have done. Mordechai was your best advisor. He ever did anything wrong to you? That's what they should have done. They should have all gone with placards and stood outside of the. They had friends. Jews must have had friends. They're zählt us the Gemara. The Gemara says, as the erste Zach, the first thing which Esther said to Mordechai is, go gather up all the Jews that are found in and fast, make a fast for me. Don't drink. No one should drink anything, eat anything, or drink anything for 3 days, night and night. Das ist gewinnt der erste. This is the first step to negate the decree. Noch mehr, even more, Esther, she said to Mordechai, also I and my helpers, the girls that are helping me, we're also going to fast. Or at first glance, Esther, the whole connection and the whole influence that Esther had on Achashverosh is because Tisachen b'chesed lefanav, that she was beautiful. He liked the way she looked. He liked her appearance. As soon as he saw her, it turned him on. Esther, the main thing of Esther was a physical attraction. And so, therefore, and Selbstverständlich, it's understood. Maybe I went too far over. It's self-understood. It's self-understood that when a person fasts, as durach fasted by when a person fasts, especially 3 days in a row, veterchen, her beauty and her appeal, according to nature, would not be greater. Exactly the opposite. It'll be less. It says that a person fasts for 3 days, a bad smell comes from your mouth. As Hind Vias, and she wanted to go into the king, she should have been plump and beautiful and with all sorts of perfume and things like that. No, she went in, didn't smell good, didn't look good. She looked terrible. She looked like she was all three days fasting. That's not a preparation for a beauty contest. Is how can it possibly be that it's a proper thing to fast? No, nor but there. And for the answer is like this: punct, just like the decree. was not according to nature. Azoy Zoich, the Yeshua, the salvation also did not come according to nature. The Yeshua, the salvation, came from tshuva, returning to God. When Einer, and one of the things of doing tshuva is to fast. When Oib Kol Yehudim, and if all of the Jews were in Shushan, that was the capital city, if they all fasted, is Dochan Isser, it's forbidden for just one person to be separating themselves from the congregation. So it's obvious as Gama Niv and Narosa Atzum Kain. So if she said we're declaring a fast in the capital city, that's where the fast was, but that's where most of the Jews were. To fast, as she said, I'm not going to separate myself from everybody else. I'm also going to fast. Even though she'll be less beautiful and less attractive to the king. And it's a law that you're not supposed to rely on miracles. You're not supposed to rely on miracles. She should have done things in a natural way. And a Jew has to work in a natural way, right? You want to find favor in the eyes of the king, you should dress nice. Same thing in Israel. You have to have an army. You have to have an army. You have to have streets. You have to have a normal country. This does a zubber, but this is not only only a garment. The army and the government and the streets and the electricity and the and you have to have mayors and everything. All this is just a garment. That's not what Judaism is. That's not the Jewish people. But this is not the reason for the salvation. Nature. Therefore, as Nitgun Nogeh, it's not important via Zoy feel what type of garment you put on. If the reason is starken sich in kiyum Torah v'mitzvahs, you have to strengthen yourself in Torah and the commandments. It will be sufficient, even just do a little thing. The Jewish people, they didn't just fast and pray. They fasted and prayed, and Esther went into the king. She didn't just sit and fast and pray and say that the king will have a dream, he'll change his mind, which in the end, the fact that he did have a dream. But she said, no, we got to do something. We'll do something. So it says, we'll see. First of all, Esther went into the king. She did something. But that was only a garment. The main thing was the spirituality. The same thing now, the Jewish people, our salvation has to come only through doing Torah and the commandments. Mer nitvos was matzad their element Hester, just because of the concealment. That we're now in exile, as Zainen Darnach, that was afterwards, side the Gezerah, inside the Hatzalah, both the decree and the salvation, it came in nature, in a natural way. True that it did. Esther went into Haman, the king had a dream, and all of a sudden Haman, it says he fell over Esther in the house of the king. Things happen. It's true there was a garment of nature. The whole thing happened in nature, but if you look at the story, in the whole Megillah, the name of God is not mentioned. It's the only book in the Torah that the name of God is not mentioned. Why? Because everything you can read in a natural way. It was accident. It happened. Things like this happen. Okay, maybe not to this degree. They don't happen. But things happen like that. The king hates, right? Trump hates the Jews. He likes the Jews. All of a sudden, something good happens, something bad happens. Things happen in nature. And so you can look at the Megillah, the story of the Megillah of Esther, and say it was accidents that just happened. Things happen in the world. Oh, but the Emes Sibos, the real reason there was because of Torah and the commandments. They're non-nanu mesudas. The fact that the Jewish people, they enjoyed the meal of Achashverosh, that's what brought the decree. And the fasting of Esther and doing tshuva and the Jewish people returning back to their Jewish identity, Torah and the commandments, this is what negated. What can we learn from this? Now, advising from them, what we can learn from this is, and especially in Heintek and especially in nowadays, Farana Zalcha, there are certain Jews, was Taina, which they claim, as the Iker Mittel, that the main means to the existence, that will assure the existence of the Jewish people, is the Zeit from Gullus, and now is diplomacy on natural and similar natural things. And they bring an Orion, they bring a proof from Esther that Esther went into Achashverosh. Dartman Vason says the Rebbe, you have to know as Oyser there, except for that, was Zayzain and Megala Panim, the Torah, Shalok that they're learning the Torah improperly, they're interpreting the Torah improperly. As they teach and they explain the story of the Megillah of Esther, exactly the opposite of what the truth is thus oicha kafira. This is also denying in the whole existence of the Jewish people. What are you trying to say? The Jewish people are a people like everybody else. There's the Irish people, there's the Mexican people, there's the people from Iceland, and there's the Eskimos, and there's the Jews. And the Jews, now we have a country. That's what you want to think. You're totally wrong. Now, really, why was it that in the Megillah there is no name of God? Why not? So you can interpret it two ways, because it wasn't a miracle. It just was a historical event. Just a historical event. Or maybe you can say, no, what happened was higher than any of the names of God. It was outside of any sort of normal description of God. And that's the proper way to interpret it. That you are standing today, all of you, Zogan them, say the rabbis, Shagam Kasher, even if all the whole world is trembling and shaking and uncertain, the Jewish people will always be standing. They'll always be firm. Their kiyum from Yidden, the existence from the Jews is anders, it's different. The kiyum from Ola Felker, the existence of all other nations is like natural gazetzen, is by natural laws. Over Yidden, but Jews, seine nit verbunden, they're not connected with nature. Unser Verbund, our nature, is only with Torah and the commandments. We see that all the nations that have oppressed the Jews through the history, and the history has just been one long string of oppression of nations by the Jews, that none of those nations exist today. None of them. The Romans are different Romans, and the Babylonians for sure don't exist, and the Greeks are different Greeks, and it's all different. The Jews are the same. That's one of the reasons why this whole argument about the land of Israel, because the Jews claim that the land of Israel, at least the fact is, not even they don't claim. How it should only be that they should claim that the fact is that the land of Israel belongs to the Jews eternally. Why does it belong to the Jews eternally? Because God gave it to us eternally. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to God. But God gave it to us to live in, to stay in for all time, eternally. And that's against the laws of nature. Every other nation, there's no nation today that's living in land that they lived in, let's say, 1,000 years ago. How long has the world been going? 5,000 years, according to science, it's been going 5 trillion years or something like that. Only 1,000 years of that have the English people lived in England. I don't even think that long. As is kommt on a sort, when there comes a difficult time or a decree, God forbid, as darfur mir sich nit verlangen, you cannot rely on diplomatic means or trying to ingratiate the non-Jews. Nit durch them, not be minds of this, is our existence of the Jewish people. We're not a normal nation. As darf sein mit pashpas ben meisav, we have to look in our deeds, verrichten and correct what is lacking, und starken and strengthening ourselves in doing the Torah and the commandments. Und demelt, and then help the shtadlos, then you should use it according to nature. Then it'll help your army. Then and even more, afilo under, and even of other nations under in azoy matzav, in such a state as we're in Voltan, b'derech hatever, for learning that they would be totally destroyed. Deswegen, nevertheless, atem nitzavim mekium, the Jewish people always stand. Men darf sich nicht schrecken, you should not be afraid. You should not be afraid of the situation of the Jews, how it seems to be in externally, that we see with our naked eye. Al pi according to nature. Unser Sach, our whole thing is starken sich. We have to strengthen ourselves in doing the Torah and the commandments. So what's the solution to the situation we're now? Now is a perfect example. Now is really a perfect example. We're in a terrible situation. Wait, how can we fix up the situation that we're in now? The whole world is against the United Nations is against us. There's anti-Semitism all over the universities with Palestine and Palestine. We're taking Palestine and Palestine. How can it possibly? The Palestinians, they're the big tzaddikim. They're the great. Because our thing is to strengthen in doing Torah mitzvahs. And then is velcha levush, no matter what garment we have physically, vetzich, and then unter you will put on will be a miraculous savior of the Jewish people. I know we've said this before, but I want to say it again. Nowadays, I think is a decree no less. The decree against the Jews is no less, how do you say, unexplainable than that of Achashverosh. All of a sudden, Achashverosh one day says, I'm going to kill all the Jews. Because why Haman came along and he said the Jews are insidious people, that you can't trust them, let me destroy them. He said, okay, what's going on now? What's going on now? It's a very interesting thing. Just very shortly. Palestine, they are the good guys. We were killing them, we're murdering them. Okay, first of all, there's a curse in the Torah, and the curses in the Parshas Kitavo in Deuteronomy. There's one of the chapters of the Torah has 98 curses in it, and one of the curses is God says, "You have left me and worshipped a non-God. I'm going to send you a non-nation." You want to see where this is? I'll tell you where it is. It is. I'll tell you. Here it is. Deuteronomy 32:21. Look it up. Deuteronomy 32:21. A non-nation. Palestine is a not nation. It's not. Doesn't exist. It simply does not exist. There is no such thing as Palestine. It doesn't exist. It never existed. In the Torah was, but in the time of Abraham, there was Pelishtim and the Pelishtim, but it had nothing to do with the Arabs, nothing to do with Islam, and nothing. Muslims, absolutely nothing. It was a country that before the formation of the what's called the State of Israel, there was no such place. The Jews gave them this place called Gaza, and the Jews, they themselves said, okay, you can have, 1961 or something like that, said, okay, you can have not exactly a country, you can have your autonomy, you can have this and that, right? So the Jews made it up. Before 1960 or something, they didn't have a flag, they didn't have a coin, they didn't have an anthem, they didn't have a capital city, they didn't have a president, they had absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. It is a total non-nation. The whole thing is a big non-existence. Doesn't exist. No such place. No such people, no such place. The whole thing is a big, how do you say, a big mirage that's created by the Zionist nation, but it's also created by God to make us come back to our senses. And not only did we create them, we're creating them right now. We don't want to evict them. We give them water. We give them this. We're going to kick them all out. Oh, they're going to be all kicked out. They're going to see we're kicking them. And nothing, exactly opposite. We just fought a war for how long? How many boys got killed in the army? And we lost. They're just like they were in the... Why? Because we have to go according to nature. What Trump says, what the United Nations said, what says the Rebbe, we have to realize, and we are realizing, I see it happening in Israel, that the Jewish people are God's people. We are chosen by God. We are God's chosen people. Don't pay any attention to what the Zionists say, to what the country says, to what Netanyahu says, to this and this, what America says with this. America, they would agree. They would agree in a second. If we would announce that we were the chosen people, they would agree. We just don't announce it. And we're ashamed of it. Says the Rebbe, stop being ashamed of who we are. We have to be God's people, and we have to act the way that God wants. The teaching from this is not that the Jews are not under any laws of nature. Is not only regarding general Jews, but each and every Jew. A Jew has to know. Remember, as Ali Yanim did everything which is from which he does, which occurred to him. Zainen upgehangen, they they depend on komen, and they come from the Eibusher, from God alone. Welche is niet begrenzt, and God is unlimited, God forbid, in the laws of nature. Emes tak, it's true, as Darvsain the B'chol Tase, you have to make vessels for God, you have to have a country, you have to have an army, you have to have this. Was in them, Tutzichan the Barecha, then God will only give you all these blessings if you are partners with him. You have to open up a business, you have to do something, you have does his upper nor that, but you have to know that's only a garment. The main thing is the blessing of God. Which comes with the connection with him by means of learning Torah and doing the commandments. It's not we have to have a stronger army and we have to have a more powerful attitude and we have to kill the terrorists and we have to make more laws and we have to do that. Those things are okay, do that. But that's number two. That's the second importance. The main importance is Torah and mitzvahs. That's the main importance. And it can't be that we'll have an army and we'll also have Torah and mitzvahs. Torah and mitzvah, the Torah and mitzvahs, Jew, that's the secondary thing. You want to be religious. The main thing, we have to have an army and we have to have the proper attitude. We have to be strong and we have to know who our enemy is. We're going to kick them out and we're going to do that. You're not going to do anything. If the Jewish people don't have Jewish identity, then there's always going to be the majority in the Knesset say, let's leave the Arabs. We're going to make peace with them. Everything's going to be okay. We're not nation. We're not the chosen people. We're not. As soon as we are, as B'shas men hut them ikar, as soon as you take the main thing, Vetzain Hatzal, then there'll be success in no matter what garment you use, even if it was fasting to go in to see the king. Darmit, therefore, mitmen, first you can also understand what it says in the Talmud Yerushalmi. Amazing thing. It says that a Jew, mamin b'chai olam v'zoreah, that a Jewish farmer, before he plants, as he believes in God, and he harvests his field, he plants. He plows his field and he seeds, he scatters the seed, because he believes in God. And then think that he believes that God is making it grow. That's what this is, a Jewish farmer. Jewish farmers are different from non-Jewish farmers. Jewish farmers, they believe that the growth of their field depends on God, and they believe in God, and then they start to plow and to plant. In Plug, if you look at this at first glance, it's not understandable. How is this faith expressed? What does it help? Even a person that doesn't believe in God at all, which they don't believe in God at all, as then we see also that they have fields and that their fields grow up. They grow up. Nor the pshat, but what does it mean is the emunah, the faith of the Jewish people, is in the fact that even in the time when we're talking about a natural thing, vegan zuriya, we're talking the most natural thing, agriculture, azach was line, which is b'shem falech, and generally, clearly, we can see clearly, as das hat in Plug at first glance, nitzutan with emunah, it has nothing to do with faith, nothing to do with trusting in God, and in God. It just you have to know a little bit about how to farm. You go to farming school, right? You go to agricultural school. It teaches you about God over there. There's billions of people that eat food, which is grown, wheat and rice that's grown by people that don't believe in God. It relies that you can see by people which don't have any faith in God. They have no connection to God. Their fields grow up. This vegan, nevertheless, a Jew knows as also Yid, because he's a Jew, is different from everybody else. Just like all of the Jewish people. Also, every individual Jew is not under the laws of nature. And therefore, he knows as Oich B'shas by their ganzen Welt, why the whole world, Vaxen will grow up according to the laws of nature, though their fields will grow and be successful according to nature, but by the Jewish people, Vaxen nor durch dem emuna from bitachon in God. That was supposed to be, that's the idea of the land of Israel. The land of Israel is the holy land. Go to Israel, you see it's holy. It's glowing in the nighttime or something, and there's something special happens in the nighttime. Right? In Israel, it's just as easy to do sins as everywhere else, and they do them. In Israel, it's just like every other place, right? Non-Jews live in Israel. There's big churches in Israel, right? How do you see it's holy? It says that's the problem. You don't see it. The same thing is when you go to a non-Jews, a total, how do you say, atheist, and he's got, Bill Gates. Oh, he's buying up all the land in America, and he's planting. Who knows what he wants to do over there? And they grow very well. Look at there's tremendously rich people in the world, right? And they don't believe in anything. They hate the Jews, right? How do they get all their money? They don't believe in God. How do they got? They got it through nature. So we should do it also by nature. Says the Rebbe, the Jews are not natural. Don't learn from the rest of the world. Don't be impressed by the world. Vidas is by it means faith. You have to have faith. There was the Holocaust. You see that they're right. Okay, that's requires faith. That's what the Jewish people are. We have to have faith in something, in that God is good and that God will help us. That's the story of Purim. Vidas is by Bali Esek, like it is, just like it is by businessmen, that we have to believe in God. Also, the same thing by people who learn the Torah. The Hatzlacha, success, religious people, the true success in learning Torah, Had Nitzutan doesn't come with that you're talented, that you're intelligent. Nor mitzayta d'shmaya, it's only from the help of God. V'chakumt, which comes by means of fearing God, having fear. V'zei, which fear of God, bring. What do you mean your fear of God? You don't want to go against, God is so good, you don't want to go against what he says. This is what brings to learning, the person to learn Torah and to really work at learning the Torah much more. It says, it says, it says, if you work really hard at learning Torah, then you'll succeed. And if you have fear of God, then you'll work much higher. And if you do, naturally, it says, Yagata o matzata. If you work hard at the Torah, then you will find. In other words, it's like you find a $100 bill on the street. You didn't do anything. All you did is go on the street. It's a big surprise. The same thing with learning Torah. When you work hard at the Torah, all of a sudden you find something. Something new happens. It says this happens when you learn the Torah with the fear of God. In other words, I'm learning the Torah because God is so good. I don't want to do anything against God. As Oibe felt that there's lacking the main thing. Need help, and if the person is not going to do a learning Torah because God wants him to, you're thinking about what am I going to receive? If you're missing this thing of you're serving God, it won't help no matter how talented you are. Because this is the wisdom of God. It's the wisdom of God. One second. HaKodesh Baruch Hu. And the main thing is the main thing is the Eibishter given Hatzlacha. When you have the main thing, then God will give you success. So what's the Rebbe trying to say? That the holiday of Purim was an amazing political victory. And says the Rebbe, that's only on the surface. That's a misinterpretation. The holiday of Purim is an amazingly godly victory. The essence of God. So great that it can't be understood. The name of God is not even mentioned. And it applies to every single Jew, and it applies to every single situation, and it applies to the most mundane situations that you could possibly be in. And that's the essence of that's the nature of the Jewish people. And just to end off maybe on a negative note, and a positive note, the whole idea of Zionism was to escape anti-Semitism. Escape anti-Semitism. The anti-Semitism was so everywhere. The Jews, they said, listen, let's do something we never tried before. We're going to change our identity. We're not going to be a religion anymore. We're going to have any connection with God. We're going to be a nation like every other nation. And as soon as we act totally natural, then everything is going to go good. And they were totally natural. And in fact, everything went pretty good. Yeah, we got a whole nation, we got an army and everything. And all of a sudden we see this, it didn't work. The whole world hates us. Now they have two reasons to hate us. And if we look back and see all the victories that we had, every single war that we won, was an amazing miracle. 6-Day War, Yom Kippur War was even a bigger miracle. And as soon as we relied on ourselves, what do? We surrendered. We won the war and we surrendered. We got to make peace. We have to be nice with them. We have to be friendly. We have to show the world that we didn't want to win. It wasn't our intention to win. We just happened to be very good soldiers, and it was big luck. Ooh, we had such luck, right? And as soon as they did that, then we started to lose. So the whole idea of Purim is to teach us that the Jewish people are not a normal people. The Jewish people are God's people, and the Jewish people will always be God's people. But we just have to be partners with God and reciprocate all the amazing miracles that God is doing for us with Torah and mitzvahs, Jewish identity. Let's go to this. Stop that share. Good.